of your favorite weekly political talk show, Pinal Power Players. Every week you can expect to hear from local, national, international politicians and celebrity guests. Get ready, it's time for Pinal Power Players.
And welcome, everybody. This is Douglas Wolf, your host for Pinal Power Players. I have a special guest today, Frank Riggs, who's running for governor of Arizona. And let's do a mic test, make sure we got you.
And how about good afternoon, Douglas?
Yeah, if you're right real close, you're in a good spot there. Fantastic.
Great to join you, and thank you for your public service.
Well, thank you very much. Normally, folks, Pinal Power Players, we do a review of what's going on around the county and stuff that I have opinions on, but our guest has a short time frame, has to be in Payson at 3 o'clock. So maybe like one of his competitors, he's going to break a few land speed records that has been in the news lately.
No. I'm the ex-cop that has given out in my time back in those days.
Plenty of tickets.
Lots of traffic tickets.
Okay. So I hope everybody's seeing us on we can wave at the camera here so everybody can see us up there. All right, good. All right. We got a good a brief on your bio. It used to be Congressman Riggs, now just Frank Riggs, I guess.
That's
Army
right.
Veteran, former police officer, and deputy sheriff in California, I believe.
Correct.
3-term U.S. Congressman, went in with the 94 takeover of the House with Newt Gingrich.
Actually elected in 1990 and went back as the only former member of Congress.
All right, you want to tilt your mic just a little bit up.
In 1994.
Perfect. Okay, so you actually preceded the Gingrich Revolution.
We did, and some people said that the group that I organized, that came to be known as the Gang of Seven Republican freshmen in the minority party in Congress, so the lowest form of life in Washington, D.C., but we organized to expose the House Bank and post office scandals, the corruption that we saw in Congress, and a lot of people said that paved the way for the contract with America and the Republican takeover of the House of Representatives for the first time in 40 years in the 1994 election, the so-called wave election.
Sure. Well, you're a 12-year resident now of Arizona.
Correct.
And you live in Scottsdale, and I know you did a non-profit thing with your spouse, or how did that happen?
Well, no, actually, in my last term in Congress, I chaired the House Education Subcommittee. I was asked to do that by Speaker Newt Gingrich. It was kind of the thankless task, but he knew that I had been a school board president in my home community and 2-term school board president. And I recruited Dr. Ron Paul to join me on that subcommittee. Our intent was to downsize, and ultimately dismantle the U.S. Department of Education. And I knew,
and we look today, and we see.
I know, but I knew in Ron I'd have a reliable vote, for anything that I might propose. And in that term, that 2-year term as subcommittee chairman, I authored the federal charter school law, the Charter School Expansion Act of 1998, signed by Bill Clinton in October of 1998, 2 months before I voted to impeach him as my final votes in Congress for perjuring himself before a grand jury. Yeah.
And obstruction of justice, in my opinion.
Obstruction of justice, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so after leaving Congress, I joined the board and ultimately became the CEO of the largest nonprofit organization in the country. We were certified a community development financial institution by the U.S. Treasury Department, and our mission was to help charter schools that predominantly served low-income student populations and low-income communities with their facility and capital financing needs, because it's a huge challenge that all charter schools face, because they typically receive about 75 to 80% of the per-pupil funding that district schools receive, and they have no additional assistance, typically no bonding authority, no taxing authority, to help them deal with their capital needs, like in educational facilities.
Well, this is a topic near and dear to my heart. I'm on a charter board in Apache Junction.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
And no way you would, probably, but and that's okay. But our biggest problem is our liability for our buildings, which are worth less than what we paid for them. And not that I'm complaining, but for people who think charter schools compete equally with the public schools, and I also volunteer at the public schools, so I'm an equal opportunity player. The fact is, charter schools have a harder road to hoe in order to build their facilities and actually compete with the public schools. So that's a wonderful thing. I don't want to get too far in the weeds on that one, but did we need a federal law in order to have charter schools in Arizona? Or was that just at the federal level?
No, that was at the federal level. What my legislation did was create a competitive grant program that is administered through the states to help charter schools with their startup funding needs. They're called planning and implementation grants. Almost all charter schools in Arizona have received those grants to help them defray those initial startup costs, because they actually, as you probably know, Douglas, they don't actually begin to receive operating funding, per pupil funding, until the doors are open and the kids are in the seats.
Yeah, and then it's 100 days before you actually get your real numbers and all that.
Right.
Well, wonderful. That was a great idea, and that was something that you had thought of while you were in California, or how did that come about?
Well, I thought about it actually when I chaired the Education Subcommittee, and we heard from some of those intrepid early charter school leaders. These were founders. They're very much entrepreneurs because of all the things you could do in life. To start a public choice school, a charter school
tough.
from scratch, is just an incredible.
And it's not going to be Facebook at the end of the day. You're not going to make $1 billion.
No. You have to be passionate about reforming and improving education and expanding educational opportunity and parental school choice. But in those early days, we heard from the founders, a lot of charter school founders, that they were being required to personally guarantee leases.
Yep.
They were taking out loans.
That's exactly right.
They were taking out second mortgages on their homes, all to deal with facility and facility financing needs. So that's why I started Charter Schools Development Corporation.
So you stayed basically in that sector up until your next run for governor, or until this current run for governor. I'm sorry.
Well, I stayed with it until I retired from that organization at the end of 2012.
But you're so young.
So, well, it was a great run, but I was also doing a tremendous amount of traveling. We ultimately assisted charter schools in 25 states.
Oh, my goodness, yes.
Including here in Arizona, where we help build and finance charter school facilities for schools that today educate over 5,000 students. I started an online statewide charter school that offers an accredited curriculum to homeschooling families. And I really wanted to
We can give out the name. That's okay. What do they call it?
Arizona Connections Academy.
Okay.
And I really wanted to focus more on giving back to my beloved adopted home state, and I really didn't want to continue to do that constant travel, because that was on the heels of the constant travel that I did between California and D.C. when I served in Congress.
So let's put the question on the table. We have August 26th is fast approaching. The early ballots go out in about 20 days, something like that.
Right.
The question most conservatives, most Republicans who listen to my show would say, why should you be the next governor of California?
Well, because I have the deepest, most proven, most consistent conservative record. And that's why I say that in a crowded field, I am the clear conservative choice. And that's based on the fact that I'm the only military veteran running in the race. I'm the only candidate with law enforcement experience as a former police officer and deputy sheriff. So I think, can walk my talk when I say that I'll make public safety, including helping to secure the border and combat border-related crime, my number one priority. It has to be public safety, of course, is the main responsibility of state government. Also, because of my deep background in education, as I mentioned, school board president, founding CEO of the largest nonprofit organization in the country dedicated to helping charter schools with their facility financing and development needs, I can walk my talk when I say that I'll be the education governor. And as you very well know, Douglas, K-12 education, again, a very important responsibility of state government, consuming roughly about 40% of our state budget. So I'm prepared to do the job. I want to give back. I recognize that I'm in a position in my life and in my career. I'll turn 64 in September. I'm blessed with good health. I'm in great shape because I work real hard at it. But I'm in a position, I think, I'm ready to lead on day one and make the tough decisions that we have to make on the challenges that we face as a state and a country without really regard to the long-term political consequences, because I'm not looking, after this long absence from the political arena, I'm not looking to re-enter politics as a career or as a stepping stone to some other office. I'm doing this because, again, I want to give back to the state, and I know that we need proven, tough, courageous leadership at the helm, and I'm ready to call them as I see them, and let those the political chips, if you will, fall where they may.
Well, in that respect, then you're saying it's more like a capstone as opposed to a stepping stone.
I don't even know if it's a capstone. I left Congress after 3 terms to keep my term limits commitment, and I believe, as I suspect you do, that elective office should be short-term public service, not a career. And then I went back to my real passion, which is expanding educational opportunity and literally creating, physically through bricks and mortar, more parental school choice. And that's what I've done for the last 16 years.
All right. Well,
but I finally decided I have to get back in the arena because these challenges are great, and I'm prepared. All my life experience, my private sector experience, my public service, including my service in Congress, has prepared me for the role of governor, and I'm ready to lead the state.
Well, let's ask a couple specifics then about we know. Based on all the numbers I've seen, we're going to have a structural deficit in the state of Arizona, regardless of what we do with Common Core or Medicaid right now.
Correct.
Let's focus then on, since we did cut $3 billion out of the state budget from the downturn and so forth. how do we get to where you want to go educationally? Let's start with the Common Core as part of that discussion in the education sphere. Please give us your ideas on education.
Sure, absolutely. I want to repeal Common Core, and I've promised to do that using the executive authority of the governor's office on day one.
Can you do that, actually?
I believe I can. I've looked at the memorandum of agreement that committed, that's Governor Brewer and then Superintendent of Public Instruction Tom Horn signed, that committed us to the Common Core standards and testing regimen. And I believe that that can be reversed. It can be revoked. Number one. Number two, I would work with the state legislature to effectively defund Common Core and save the state the $350 million plus that the Arizona Association of School Business Officials says it will cost to fully implement.
Sure, testing and everything that goes on.
Correct. And because frankly, I don't think that's money that we have to spend. I'm sure we can afford it. If we were to spend it in K-12 education, I'd much rather spend it to attract and retain the most talented and dedicated educators, school leaders, and classroom teachers. And if we're really serious about pulling up test scores, because right now what we're under is we're already under this federal mandate to test every child every year, and under No Child Left Behind, and to gauge what the feds call AYP, annual yearly progress, which obviously from serving on the charter school governing board. But those test results are aggregated so we can compare school to school, district to district, conceivably state to state. But they're also done on a disaggregated basis by special student populations, and it's those disaggregated results for the most difficult to educate segments of the student population that tend to bring down our test scores. So if we want to raise test scores, we've got to focus intensively on those most difficult to educate segments of the student population that are typically performing below peer and grade level. And those are kids that are low income, that come from households that qualify for the federally subsidized lunch program, kids with
probably English maybe as a second language.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah.
I was going to say that. I mean, kids certainly with educational disabilities and special needs, and then lastly, because we're Arizona, students with limited English proficiency that are called English language learners or English second language students.
Okay. Well, and so everybody asks, well, on the trail when they say, okay, we're going to get rid of Common Core, how are you going to replace it? Now, I understand you have some program ideas. Will it take money, or how do you think we can do it within the current framework that we have, budget-wise?
Well, I think we can. I mean, the bottom line is I don't favor the further federalization of K-12 education. I don't want the nationalization of standards and tests that we as Arizonans decide to use to educate our kids. I think we as Arizonans have to own that responsibility. I think we're perfectly capable of it. I think we can design at the secondary school level heightened, stronger standards that correlate with the admission standards of our world-class universities. I think we're up to this challenge, and like I said, it's a challenge that we have to own as Arizonans if we want to see bootstrap improvement across the board.
It seems like, not to be contradictory to your argument, but the business community has bought in hook, line, and sinker to standards across the country, and the military has actually bought into it. I was surprised to learn, because they want to be able, because they move their, if you were in the military every 2 years, they want to make sure that a kid in fourth grade in Alabama is the same in fourth grade in Arizona. How do you answer those criticisms?
Well, I answer it by simply saying that this is trendy. It's the latest silver bullet, but there is no panacea. I mean, there's no magic solution to improving the quality of K-12 education. And what gets overlooked in all this, Douglas, is that good schools already, as again I suspect the charter school on whose governing board you serve, they already use a nationally norm reference test. They do it on a pre and post basis at the beginning of the school year, at the end of the school year, to gauge the progress of every student across that school year. Number one. Number two, we're already under a federal testing mandate, and I don't think Arizonans, I don't know how well this is known in the business community or in military circles, with military families, but we're under a testing mandate because we take funding, a lot of funding, from the feds for low-income students under what's called Title I, a federal categorical program. And as a condition of taking that funding, we must, as every other state must, administer a test called the National Assessment of Educational Progress every 2 years to a representative sampling of students in grades 4 and 8 in the subjects of reading and math. You can actually give that test in other subjects, but at a minimum in the subjects of reading and math. And those test scores are published for the whole world to see, and we can use them if we want to make these school-to-school, district-to-district, state-to-state comparisons.
Well, I guess the argument they make, and it's not necessarily the testing level, and it's curriculum, that the same thing will be taught in every fourth grade across. They want uniformity across the United States.
Right, and I don't want that. I don't want a one-size top-down, one-size-fits-all, top-down federal education mandate. I've actually had, I think you referred to, we have some of the highest-performing schools in the country. They're typically part of public charter school networks, as you know. And I've received or heard concerns and complaints that these standards could actually cause some of our school organizations to dumb down. I've heard complaints from parents about the collection of longitudinal student data, potentially violating family privacy rights. I'm concerned about anything that would encroach upon parental school choice or our homeschooling. So I think we need to take a step back. I think we need to regain control, of decision-making at the state and local level in K-12 education, and that's why I say step one is to repeal Common Core.
All right. We don't have a whole lot of time, and that was a fantastic discussion of it, and I wish we had more time for it, but
we could do a whole show on Common Core.
We could, very easily, or just on education. And
yes.
Before I let you go on that one, though, one thing I ask all the candidates is, okay, the state, the government, in the form of, the schools are doing what they can in the charter schools. How do you fix parents who don't give a darn?
Well, there's no pat answer for that, as you very well know. Because so many of our challenges as a society, as a state, as a country, extending beyond K-12 education, go to the question of how can government promote policies that encourage intact families and stop the disintegration of families, the huge rise in the number of out-of-wedlock births and fatherless families, particularly in minority communities. How do you address that? How do you address the disintegration of marriage? Because the bottom line is every child it needs access to a high-quality public education, but ideally would be raised in a household by two nurturing, loving, role-modeling parents. And that that is something that government can encourage, but it's not something that government can mandate. It goes back to family and personal responsibility, which is at the heart of the ongoing American experiment.
And this is the problem. I agree.
That's right.
I mean, 30% have opted out, basically, of being responsible for themselves.
Yeah, but I trust parents to make the best decisions for their own
for
kids.
The 70% of them do.
Yeah, that's right.
And I'm just saying, okay, we're going to fail as a society if we don't do something about that other 30%. And I agree with you. We're a free society, so we can't mandate. We're not a tyranny where you say your kid will show up, but we will be lined up against the wall.
Right.
But it is something I just throw out to all the candidates just to get the reaction.
Right. Well, policy should try to promote marriage and intact families,
virtuous
virtue,
society.
and no question about that.
Let's jump on to Medicaid expansion. That was a very contentious issue in this state. The governor got the Democrats to join with a few Republicans who joined over and decided that this is the only way we can fund and meet our mandate under one of the state propositions to provide medical care and Medicaid, basically expansion. Your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are let's see the outcome of the court case initiated by the Goldwater Institute and joined by 36 Republican lawmakers, fiscal conservatives, who I applaud and commend. I think they're doing the right thing, and I think the language of our amended Constitution is pretty clear that a supermajority, that is to say a 2/3 vote, is required to raise any tax, levy, or fee or assessment. So let's wait and see the outcome of that. But as policy, Obamacare and Medicaid expansion is bad, fundamentally flawed policy. We know now from the estimate put out by the Heritage Foundation that the state's matching share, its contribution for Medicaid expansion, is going to be $2.8 billion approximately.
State of Arizona, is that what you're? Yeah,
State of Arizona.
Okay.
Between now and the year 2022. So
it's right around the corner, folks.
Right around the corner.
Yeah.
And we're Douglas, because of your professional position, we're dealing with a number of huge financial challenges. I mean, just a moment ago we were talking about Common Core and K-12 education. Just today, a Maricopa County Superior Court judge ruled that K-12 education has been underfunded. Now, she has her tentative order deals with increasing the base level of funding, per pupil funding, on a prospective going forward basis, and she hasn't ruled on the retrospective question. But we have these huge challenges. I don't see any way that, again, we can afford to expand Medicaid eligibility as the governor, as you pointed out, the governor, and with unanimous Democrat support and a few Republican votes, decided to do, but expand Medicaid eligibility from 100% of federal poverty to 138% of federal poverty. I want to roll that back. First of all, I make it a point to always stress that we as a state have a higher percentage of Obamacare enrollees now, through the national exchange under the age of 18, so these are minor dependent children, than any other state.
That's amazing.
And conversely, we have a lower percentage in all the other age segments, including the so-called invincible millennials, who, because of the mandate of Obamacare, were supposed to sign up in droves to make it feasible from a underwriting, insurance underwriting, or actuarial
they had to throw
standpoint.
enough money in the pot to make it work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And spread the risk.
Yes.
So now I'm cognizant that we have all these families that have enrolled their children because they're living at or below 138% of federal poverty. So the first thing I want to do is roll back Medicaid expansion for those childless adults who are working age and able-bodied. So, we just have to find some balance here. Number one, and number two, I'm also fundamentally opposed to Obamacare because it takes, according to the Congressional Budget Office, $1 trillion out of Medicare over the next decade.
No, the money's got to come from somewhere.
Well, Medicare is a retirement health insurance program,
and it's been contributed to. It's not
That's right.
It's not welfare because it has been contributed to.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And $200 billion of the $1 trillion is Medicare Advantage, and 25% of Medicare recipients are participating in Medicare Advantage. And as a United States Congressman, I fought some bruising political battles to try to reform and strengthen Medicare and put it on sound long-term footing. And I don't want Medicare to be used, to be rated to pay for Obamacare subsidies, including Medicaid expansion here in Arizona.
Okay, terrific. Well, I think I know how you feel on the border, and I think our audience knows that. Is there any one salient thing, because I don't want you to be late for your next meeting, that you would say which could be done on the day one you walked into office as the governor?
Well, I would like our listeners to know that as a member of Congress, I helped get the funding to build the fence on California's border with Mexico, which now extends
and works
extends into the Yuma sector of our border, which is relatively secure.
Yep.
We clearly need a federal, state, local government response to secure the Tucson sector of the border, and we're going to have to bring the Tohono O'odham tribal nation leadership to the table as well. We need the appropriate barrier there, the manpower, the technology. Of course, the governor can help rally support and resources for the state's role in securing the Tucson sector of the border. 9/11 changed everything. It has fundamentally and probably permanently changed the way we have to look at border security. We have to know who's in our country. We have to know who's coming and going. There is a very legitimate state role there, certainly supporting our border county sheriffs and local law enforcement and helping, again, to secure the border and combat border-related crime.
All right, we're getting out of time, running down on time here. Taxes. One of the things you've been criticized for was when you were a member of Congress,
right,
you voted to raise the minimum wage. Would that be on your agenda for Arizona as a governor?
No, I don't think so. We're still in a very tepid recovery from the recession, as you very well know. I mean, you're looking at tax receipts and assessed valuations.
Yeah.
I want people to know that we're getting into that part of the campaign where we're going to see what I consider to be kind of low road smear tactics used. But I think the claim is I voted to raise the minimum wage 4 times. That's a reference to, there was actually one vote, legislation. There were procedural votes leading up to the final vote, the vote on final passage. And yes, I did support an increase in the federal minimum wage because I helped broker a compromise with the Clinton administration that said basically, if you will sign our legislation fundamentally reforming welfare by imposing time limits and work requirements on able-bodied welfare recipients, I'll vote this one time to raise the federal minimum wage. We also had to carve out a sub-minimum wage for teenagers in those kind of jobs. And that is, when you serve, it's easy to take shots from the cheap seats. But when you serve in Congress and you're casting hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of votes, you've got to make tough decisions. So I'm proud of my record on the whole, but I realize people could go through it and selectively parse votes that they disagree with.
Well, I think welfare reform was worth, in my opinion, I probably would have voted the same way to get welfare reform because the argument would be made, well, if we give them a little bit more on the minimum wage side, it's only 3% of the population's on minimum wage. They'll get a chance to get off welfare because they'll be earning enough not to take the aid, and I think that's probably what was in your mind.
It was precisely the point, because so many, obviously, and I understand a lot of single parents struggle against heroic odds, but, a great majority of the people on welfare, of course, are single parents. And so it was the added incentive to help them make that transition from welfare to work.
Makes sense to me. Although it does sound, like you say, if you can shape it in a certain way to make it sound bad. But,
sure you can.
And Clinton.
That's what happens when you have a real record.
And well, that's it. And I think people are pining for not Bill Clinton necessarily, but the Clinton years as far as the economy compared to this clown.
Oh,
It's just light years away. Clinton at least was pro-business and understood what it took to get people back to work.
Clinton had been a governor.
Yeah.
And he understood and respected that the executive branch and legislative branch of government are co-equal partners.
Right.
And they have to cooperate at the end of the day. You've got to govern. This president is so ideological and lacks that experience. I don't think he has much respect for Congress and the legitimate independent role of the legislative branch of government, as our founding fathers and the framers of the Constitution intended.
Well, in a town full of arrogant people, he takes the cake. In my opinion, he
Wow.
is. If you look up arrogant in the dictionary, you'll see Barack Obama's picture.
It could be.
Last question before you have to go. What folks have endorsed you, and who you're most proud of that are supporting you, and then you could tell us again, just wrap up why we should vote for you.
Well, I'm really pleased. I've gotten wonderful support and endorsements. I mean, just in the last few days, we've announced the endorsement of state legislative leaders who are conservative icons. Certainly, Russell Pierce, former Senate President Russell Pierce, who is a conservative warrior, a leading defender of our border and constitutional and conservative values. Couldn't be more proud to have Russell's endorsement. Then on the heels of that, Judy Burgess, who's a longtime state representative, now state senator on the west side of the valley, and basically she lives in and represents Sun City West, endorsed my candidacy. Very, very proud to have their endorsement. But I'm also endorsed by the Arizona chapter of the American Association of Physicians and Surgeons for my support for my position on Obamacare. I'm supported and endorsed by Arizonans Against Common Core. A lot of good things are happening, and I can sense the momentum, since this isn't my first rodeo, and kind of feel that wind at my back, and I'm going to keep working real hard to try to earn the support of the majority or plurality of Republican primary voters who'll be deciding on who our nominee is. I always say that look at my record on the whole in its entirety. Also look at the fact that I have twice defeated Democrat incumbents to win election to the United States Congress. I don't think anyone in history has done that, actually. And I think that speaks to my political pedigree and my ability to carry our party's banner into the general election and what it promises to be a very tough general election fight against Mr. DeVal, a true blue Clintonite, and that whole organization that would love to turn our state purple and then try to turn it blue for Hillary in 2016. And we're not going to let that happen.
And where can people follow your campaign or find you?
They can find me at Riggs4. This is the website, Riggs4, FORAZGov.com. Lots of information, very detailed information on my views, on my positions. I'm running against a couple of candidates with very thin records. One who's never held elective office, and I guess believes she should start at the top. Another who is current statewide office holder, never held legislative office, never had to cast a single tough vote. I've cast lots and lots of tough votes. My point being, they both tout their plans, and I always like to say that a plan without the right experience is just words on a piece of paper, but a plan with the right experience, the kind of experience I think I have and offer, now that's the real deal.
Frank Riggs, you've been a great guest, and I appreciate
my
you coming
pleasure,
down. I know you got
Douglas.
a tight schedule, so please, you can just walk yourself out. I'll just maintain
right.
and go into our next commercial
I
break.
want to hear you say Pinal Power Players a whole bunch of times.
Hi, Marie here for wannasing.com. Are you looking for professional DJ or karaoke services for your next holiday party or get-together? wannasing.com can provide the best in sound, lighting, and a professional MC to host your next event. Whether it be a company party, birthday party, wedding, or any occasion, wannasing.com is ready to provide the fun and make it a night to remember for years to come. Call 480-664-8801. That's 480-664-8801. Mention this radio ad and receive a special discount for your next fun event. wannasing.com.
More music 24 hours a day.
When you visit Hill Family Dentistry in Santan Valley, dentist Dr. Tim Hill provides each patient with personalized, gentle care that you deserve. Our entire team is dedicated to providing you and your family with services that will make you smile. With a full range of general, cosmetic, and specialty dentistry services that will keep you and your family smiling. Our commitment to our community is to provide outstanding oral health. Hill Family Dentistry is located on 36359 Ganzell Road in Santan Valley, diagonally across from Banner Ironwood Hospital. Evening and weekend appointments available. We accept most insurances and have in-office policies available for non-insured. Contact us today at 480-588-8127. Hill Family Dentistry.
And we're back. It is about 104 here in beautiful but warm Arizona today. And adding to the warmth that we normally experience in the summertime, the monsoon season has arrived in Arizona. So Santan got hit pretty hard in the last week. And as you may have remembered, maybe not, that I was on vacation 2 weeks, actually 3 weeks before this session today that you're joining here on Pinal Power Players. So I saw I was out of the country. I was went to Wimbledon for kind of a dream vacation. Went there with my lovely wife, and we spent a couple weeks. It was fantastic. And in that transition, or that time, the transition happened to the monsoon season. So we returned, and it was a little more humid than we were used to. But that's where it is. So I'll be on the air every week now from through the primary vote, August 26th, which is coming up here. The early ballots will be going out. Next week, Virginia Ross will be on, who's our county recorder, and she'll be talking about early balloting and all the different things that have changed with the ballots and things you need to know in order to be an informed voter, and tell your friends so that they are also aware what they need to do to vote for the people they are looking forward to voting for. So they make sure they get their vote in, because every vote does count, and we want to make sure people do participate. That's very important in the process. You can't have a representative democracy if people don't participate. What you end up with is too much apathy and end up with real bad things happening. So in the last week or two, a couple things that I want to make public of note that you may have not heard. Adam Quasman, who I've endorsed for CD1 Congressional District to take on Ann Kirkpatrick, was endorsed by our own county attorney, Lando Voiles. And so we have kind of a split decision there. The Law and Order team, which was Attorney Voiles and Sheriff Paul Babu, the sheriff has decided to throw in with Andy Tobin, but Lando has become an independent voter there and decided he's going to go with Adam Quasman. So it should be interesting to see how that works out. Another note, I want to send out my condolences to the Babu family here in Santan. There's Paul, Sheriff Paul, and the Justice of the Peace, Sean, and a smattering of grandkids and brothers and sisters and so on. Their patriarch of their family died this last week, and so I want to send my condolences to them, because we're all humans, political or not. We have family, and when you lose the patriarch of the family, like as I said, it's kind of a tough thing. So, thoughts to them. The other thing that has gone on this week, a couple more endorsements that happened while I was away, was Doug Ducey, who's running for governor, was endorsed by Al Melvin, who decided to drop out of the race. Al is a Pinal County resident down in Saddlebrook, and couldn't get the traction he needed in order to get the clean election funding, so he decided to throw in his hat with Doug Ducey. And also Senator Mike Lee, who's from Utah, and is the Tea Party candidate, or I should say senator there. And the reason I say that is because Mike Lee took on Bob Bennett, who had been in the Senate for a long, long time in Utah, and some thought, and the majority did, that he'd been there, Bennett had been too long, and Mike Lee did win that seat. So he has come aboard on the Doug Ducey side, and that's a good thing for Doug Ducey, who is I'm supporting for governor in this race. So that happened. A couple other things going on around the county is that the County Board of Supervisors did pass a budget, and the budget includes no tax increases at the county level. And because of the land valuations, property valuations for 2 years ago when they were at the absolute bottom, the amount of property tax to be collected is actually has gone down. And so the county board decided that, okay, we're not going to raise taxes, but we're not going to increase spending. They did throw a little bit at the sheriff's department for some new equipment and so forth, but pretty much kept it the way it was. And so you won't see any tax increases. The only negative to it is that we do have we'll have approximately $9 million in spending that will have to be covered by the rainy day fund. Luckily, we have one. There's about a $40 million balance in the rainy day fund. It looks like it will need about $9 million, and then hopefully by the time the next budget cycle comes around and the property values have gone up a little bit and the economy recovers, because our county gets its resources from income from property tax and sales tax and some other things, those being the two biggest. And with any good luck, and if Obama doesn't screw up the economy one more time, we should have some good growth there and maybe be able to get ourselves back to balance. But that's what we're hoping. But if it doesn't start to turn around soon, then the only thing the county can do is start cutting spending, and the main bulk of spending is in personnel services. So it means jobs, basically. More good news, though. When I got home, I noticed that Hunt Highway, as I was kind of driving down for the airport, Hunt Highway was completely, well, I shouldn't say completely, about 99% done on the first phase of making it a 4-lane with turnoffs and a middle section, and isn't that wonderful? So now, folks, the only part they haven't finished is if you're going to Santan Flat, they still haven't got that turn inside done, but it is like it's just absolutely amazing, the transformation going from the old part of Hunt Highway going north and then getting on the new part. It's like going from the 18th century into the 21st century. So, kudos, hands together for the county board and for the people in the Public Works Department and the contractors, the private contractors who actually got the road built. And it's just a wonderful thing. And then they'll start working on the second phase of Hunt Highway going south all the way to Gary Road. So that's a great thing. And the biggest thing you notice, we had the monsoons last week, and Hunt Highway is always, or had been always, flooded out on the north end right towards Empire. And now, despite the huge rains we had, there was I didn't see any leftover gravel or rock on the road, which normally happen, and did not close the road. There's no road closure there. So it's just night and day, and it's just a great thing to have completed, and it'll make our community a lot easier to get in and out of, and it's good for everybody to have a good egress and ingress. So a wonderful thing. Down in Arizona City, however, my friend Nancy Hawkins and her real estate company, talked to her this week. She specializes in Arizona City, Nancy Hawkins, so Hawkins Realty. 50 power poles down and a bunch of roads closed in AZ City because they really got the brunt of the storm. It was more focused and the winds were a lot stronger down in that part of the county. So they're still working just to get a lot of power back on in that area of the county. So, with any luck, that'll be done very soon because I'm sure the people down there would like to have their power, especially when it's 105 degrees and 40% humidity. It's kind of nasty. Oh, I didn't finish up on the budget vote. One thing that happened in the budget vote that I should call out was that it passed 4-1, and the dissenting vote was Supervisor Cheryl Chase, who said that she didn't think, as her Facebook posting put it, that the other departments and offices, which would include mine, didn't take seriously enough her recommendations on cutting budgets. And I'm not going to comment on that, but that's what her comment was and why she did not vote for the budget. So just so you know, it was a 4-1 vote. Coming up in the county this week, there are some events. If you're of the conservative bent, Republican/conservative, on Saturday, tomorrow, the 12th, there's the Conservative Candidate Roundup, which should be kind of fun. It's down in Costa Grande at the Paramount Theater. I don't think I've ever been there, but it's going to have featuring, drum roll, please. I don't know if do we have drum rolls on here? I bet we do here that we could actually do some sound effects just for the fun of it. For this big announcement here. Let's see what we have. Blizzard, that won't work. Burglar alarm, let's see what that one sounds like. Can't get it to play. Oh, well. Anyway, so Sheriff Joe, was that it? I guess maybe not. Sheriff Joe is going to be the headliner, and stump speeches by the candidates. And the candidates who are going to be there, Darla DeWald, she's running for House 8. Irene Littleton, Senate 8. Wayne Bachman, House 8, Mark Fincham, Vince Leach, and Steve Smith, all for the House and Senate in District 11. And then for the school board locally, Casa Grande, Mark Maurer and Mike Volker. State Treasurer candidate Jeff DeWitt, who's going to be on with me, and I think the second week in August he's my guest, and he's running against Hugh Hallman and Randy Pullum. So he will be my third. I've had the other two candidates for treasurer on. Jeff will be on. I think it's the 8th. So you can look on. I don't know if we post. We got to get posting it on the website. We haven't done that with KQCK. I'm banging on Joe, the Major Domo, to get that done. So hopefully, who else will be there? Finally, Vince Manfredi, who's running for Maricopa City Council. Adam Quasman, my man for CD1, and Diane Douglas, who's running for Superintendent of Public Instruction. And while I was on vacation, I noticed that John Huppenthal, who's our current superintendent, made a few confessions that he had been posting to blogs and websites under the name Themistocles, and saying some stuff that or posting some things that were kind of hyper conservative. People might say ultra right, but most of it, which was basically he wanted to engage in the debate. And the two problems he has with it: one is he was using a nom de guerre or nom de plume, depending on how you want to look at it, with the names Themistocles, and secondly, that he was on the state computers from the Department of Education to do it. And as an elected, he has a lot of latitude. It's basically his office, and the only people who can fire him are the voters. But it did look bad for him, so he did kind of man up about it. But then in the middle of it, he kind of got teared up, and he was kind of embarrassed, I think, more than anything, and broke down crying about that he'd been busted. So Diane Douglas, who was a candidate, you would think would be a long shot. John Huppenthal's opened the door for her, so we'll see what happens with that race. So they'll all be together Saturday, July 12th, just to repeat, 1 to 4 p.m. at the Paramount Theater in Casa Grande, Arizona, and catering by the Big House Cafe. Ooh, okay. So there'll be food, drinks, whatever, and it's a conservative roundup, and it starts at, 1 o'clock, show of Sheriff Joe Arpile. And for those of you who have never met the sheriff, he's very affable, and he'll talk to anybody. He's not one of these guys that hides behind a security detail or anything like that. You have a gripe with him, or if you want to shake his hand, say good job, he's more than approachable in that respect. So there's your chance. This is your chance to get out and support candidates and hear Sheriff Joe talk, probably about the border, if nothing else, to start. And on the 19th, which is the Saturday following, not this tomorrow, but the week after, is the Ice Cream with the Candidates, which is being put on at the Roy Hudson Complex. For those of you new to Pinal County or Arizona, it's in Apache Junction. It's the government center up there, it's on Idaho. So it's 1 to 4 o'clock, and Ice Cream with the Candidates. So hopefully it'll be indoors. I'm pretty sure it is. Just kidding. And you get to have candidates who will be there. Would be governor candidates, state rep, state senate, state treasurer, justice of the peace, constables, and so on. And free. Oh boy, this will get a lot of people. Free ice cream bars, or you can buy a hot dog. So not only will be hot dog speaking because they're all candidates, but they'll be getting iced down with some ice cream bars. So that's July 19th, 1 to 4 p.m. at the Roy Hudson Complex. It's in Apache Junction, and here's the address: 575 North Idaho Road. So, they have a raffle and 50-50 drawing. So there you go. There's another event you can go to if you're interested in politics and want to get involved and meet those candidates face to face. So what else happened in the world? What was going on was a couple of interesting things. The border, of course, exploded while I was on vacation, not physically, but we've got a very cleverly contrived way of keeping Obama's problems with the IRS, with all the other things that are going on that are scandalous and have distracted, the complete meltdown in the Middle East by American foreign policy, and the Sunnis fighting the Shiites, and all the stuff going on. Like him or not, Saddam Hussein in Iraq kept a lid on all that ethnic tribal infighting and the religious wars. Now it's wide open, and it's going to be a real interesting time in the future. Although, we're not going to send troops or anything, but by way of distraction, this administration has figured out a way to get a bunch of very sympathetic, and I am sympathetic. I wouldn't want to have been born in Honduras. I thank God every day I was born in the United States of America and not in Honduras or San Salvador or Nicaragua or any of those places. Not that you can have a terrible, necessarily have the worst possible life there, but most of them do have very difficult lives, poverty-wise, and there's just a lot of things that 99.9% of us listening on the show will never experience in their lives. So I can understand why they want to get out. But the administration found a way to open the door, use the loophole in the law, which was written into law by George Bush under his watch, which basically, and it actually goes back further than that, which basically allows kids, quote unquote, under 18 to come into the country and not be immediately deported as long as they're not from Mexico, because they have to go through a judicial process and a hearing and make sure they're not being exploited or whatever. Well, there's the way. You open the door that way. The people at the Obama administration, like them or not, are fairly clever, and they know how to use the graphics. The president doesn't even go down to the border. He doesn't want to go investigate to see what's going on. And Nightly News has talked about it. He's just basically ignoring it because he's letting the story play out to pull the heartstrings of the millions of Americans who are compassionate and people who feel, empathetic for the lives of these folks who weren't fortunate enough to be born here. We all get that, and what really pushes my button about this is the liberals always complain that the Republicans are tight-fisted and we don't want to help out the poor, and we don't want to do this, we don't want to do that. The fact is, conservatives are the per capita and as a group the biggest people who donate to charity. In other words, they're willing to take their own money out of their own pocket, not being coerced by government, and give it to whatever organization they think is best suited towards helping the less fortunate among us. Liberals seem to think it's their duty, and it's not God-driven because they can't have that in their thinking, that they have to have government come in and with the force of violence, basically a gun to your head saying, give me your wallet, I'm going to give your last $1,000 or whatever it is to folks over here who may or may not you think are actually need the help, but the government has decided through its administrative process and through years of liberal statism that's the way the money should go. Okay, to me that's just theft. That's all it is, and if it were based on any facts that conservatives never give money to charity or that it was just a completely different set of circumstances, you might have some sympathy for the liberal argument, but I can't abide it. There are people who need help, and I should have the choice of how much and where I want to give my money. But that's the way it is. So you put the most pathetic, pitiful folks coming across the border and their mothers in a lot of cases, and of course you're going to get a lot of support for that. I mean, who's going to say I can't support it? And so now we're stuck with, what do you do? The Border Patrol is not set up to be, a healthcare agency. It's not set up to be a foster home system. And like I said, the president is just blithely letting it play out, and he's thinking it's going to break his way because he's believing that the American people won't say no to the plight of these kids. And if you take these, where do you stop? I mean, that's the number one question. You say, okay, well, we've taken, let's say, 50,000, which isn't a lot in a country of 300 million people. Okay, it's not a huge amount. But at what point do you say, the next kid in line is the one who doesn't get in? Where does that happen? Because I guarantee you, and I'm sure even the liberals would say this, I can't imagine them saying we should take in everybody from everywhere in the world who's in the same plight as the poor in Central America. I mean, there might be one or two Looney Tunes who would say that, but in general, even the most liberal people are not going to say I know they think we're bad because we're rich and we've exploited all these other countries, which is the argument they use, and that's why we should give the money back. But the point is, I don't think I know anyone who's willing to say, at least publicly, any politician, that we should take everybody that can get across the border no matter what. In fact, we should send the buses down there and just bring them across Mexico and get them. The real fault lies with in my view, besides the administration exploiting these kids, is Mexico. Mexico is a lawless country run by a plutocratic elite on behalf of the rich. I mean, it's exactly what we don't want our country to become. Where there's 99% poor people and 1% own everything else. We don't want that. And the reason you don't want it is you see what the results are, what Mexico's like. Why do people flee across the border every day to get to the United States? Because life stinks in Mexico. There's no way around it. For most of the folks, it's a bad time. It's a bad way of living. And they will not reform. So you get the drug cartels that are a major player in Mexico. Someone is allowing all those buses to drive up from San Salvador and El Salvador and Honduras all the way up that highway to get to the border in Texas. The Mexican government could stop them, but they don't. And on top of it, we have a Marine who, in a questionable mental state, stumbles across the border with 3 guns, and he's been sitting in prison for 2 months. Now, does the Mexican government feel compassion about him? Because no, absolutely not. They are cut and dried. If you go across their border illegally, they're going to lock you up or send you home or whatever is the punishment. They don't have any sense of maybe we ought to be compassionate about this Marine who's obviously lost and couldn't tell him a straight story, which is not his mistake. He told him several different reasons as to why he came across the border with 3 guns in his truck. Our government can send guns across with Fast and Furious and then cover it up, but nothing will be said about that in this context. But this poor Marine who had all his worthly belongings in this truck is sitting down there in a Mexican prison. Now, I understand they are treating him better because one of our congressmen did go to see him, Matt Salmon. So hats off to Matt Salmon for going down there and starting to work with the folks trying to get him released. But the point is, we subsidize Mexico's government by taking the overflow of people who can't stand to be there anymore. If they couldn't go here, and if they were armed, the government eventually would be overthrown by the folks down there, the average people, because they would not put up with the government they have. But, of course, you can't have a gun in Mexico. That's completely, unless you are in the drug business and then they leave you alone because you have more firepower than the police. But the point is, we have not heard not one single word from any congressman from Mexico, one of their electeds, not from the president of Mexico, on either this Marine, Tamarisi, I think his name is down there, or secondly, why people keep coming across the border, not only Mexicans, but people from all those other countries below them in the peninsula. Why does that happen? Well, to be answered some way down the road, I suppose. But I appreciate everyone's time today. Next week, let me see here who we have on. I think, let's see, I've got to check that calendar. Wonderful to have these phone devices. I do love my smartphone for that. Virginia Ross will be on next week, as I said. She'll be talking about the elections. And then on the 25th, candidate for governor, Doug Ducey, will be on. And I was wrong. On the 1st of August is Jeff DeWitt. So he's on the August 1, and then August 8th is Diane Douglas. And then on the 15th, in a strong effort to be bipartisan here on the radio, we will have on Fred Duvall, who's running for governor on the Democratic ticket. So for you folks out there who think I'm not an equal opportunity interviewer or Pinal Power Player host, Fred Duvall has agreed to come in studio and be on the air with me, and we'll get a chance to ask him some tough questions. And hopefully by that time we'll be able to do some phone screening and have people call in by phone, and be able to take questions from the audience, which we can't do right now. We're working on it, but it's a work in progress, as I like to say. And we now have reached the end of our time. It's just about 1:30 here in beautiful Pinal County, And I want to say thank you for listening in today. And I want to thank my guest again, Frank Riggs, running for governor. Wish him good luck in his endeavors. Even though I'm a Doug Ducey supporter, I want all of our Republican candidates to do well and make it a real contest, because it's the future of the state is in the hands of the governor, whoever wins. And we want them all to get out and be the best they can be in a competitive environment, because competition is what brings out the best in everybody. And that's what free enterprise is all about. And that's what I hope the Republican Party is all about, at least the conservatives are. So thank you for listening. Next week, Pinal Paul Players on again at 12:30. I'm Douglas Wolf, your host. God bless these United States, and God bless Pinal County.
I hope you enjoyed today's show, where you can always expect to hear the top local, national, international politicians and celebrity guests. KQCK Radio, radio worth watching.
Give it to me one time.